Hello there. Today I wanted to talk about Measure 118 here in Oregon because it's interesting and I find it odd that I have not actually seen any other political ads other than for Measure 118 here in Oregon. I wanted to talk about this one because I feel it's kind of important to do so, especially considering it's the 22nd when I'm recording this of October, meaning that there is very few days left before the last day, with the election day, that any of this is going to matter. Basically, on the surface at least, in a surface level breakdown, Measure 118 is supposed to be taxing businesses, and this is universally all businesses. You could be a one-stop mom and pop shop, and you're going to get a 3% tax for sales above 25 million. So if you're a company or a small business owner, potentially my sister actually with her art could get taxed 3% for all sales she makes if she made over 25 million. Of course, she's nowhere near that kind of income, so she's not going to be touched for a long time in that regard, potentially. Then again, she also recently teamed up with REI. So if you're in the local Portland area, by the way, hint, hint, wink, wink, go look for my sister's art. She's Meowlos. You're gonna not be able to miss it. Just a bunch of stickers. It's really cool. Anyway, that said, yeah, if she got to that point, then she'd also be subject to this. So if you're somebody who works from home and you're self-employed, you would probably, and you make money from this. You actually sell things. Like say you're an author or something or a musician, you're going to suffer from this tax if you've ever made 25 million in a year. That money is supposed to be collected to be divvied up to all Oregonians. So supposedly, the whole purpose of it is that every single person who lives here in Oregon and has lived here for at least 200 days, which is a kind of a randomly weird number and pretty short period to choose, but sure, will receive $1,600. That's $1,600. That is beginning in 2026. So 2 years out, weirdly, as well, which I find to be odd. And they estimate that $6.5 billion will be raised from this tax. It's supposedly to help lower and middle class Oregonians who are struggling. So basically, anybody who is above the poverty, like just a little ways above the poverty line, at the poverty line, and of course below it. Me and my mom are people who are currently below the poverty line. So it supposedly would benefit people like myself and my mom, and many other people actually that we know. That said, I am personally very concerned about it. Also, I find it just interesting that it's going to go to all Oregonians, supposedly, meaning that even if you're Phil Knight, you're apparently going to be getting $1,600. Also, I'm very unsure of what the $1,600, how it works, because it just says you'll receive 1,600 bucks. Okay, cool. Like, what is it? Is it a one-time tax of 1,600? Is it a monthly payment? Is it a yearly thing? I would like to know that. And I feel like I don't just need to know that. I think most people, whether or not you want this or not, whether you could use it or not, whether it would help you or not, needs to know that kind of detail. It's pretty important because it doesn't seem like they're making that very clear, which is a very Oregon habit. So that said, apparently people on both sides, including much more progressive-minded people, are actually trying to fight against it. In fact, they're spending millions of dollars on ads to get you to vote against it. Because the main reason why is if you tax all these companies, especially the corporations, they're just going to do what they always do. And they're just going to jack up prices and price gouge us in order to compensate for their lost revenue, which is exactly how the corporate states of America functions. It's a corporatocracy and a kleptocracy. Of course they're going to do that. That is an inevitability. That is a guaranteed fact. That is, unless this legislation, so this measure, actually has something, which I guarantee it doesn't because this is fucking Oregon. If it actually had something in it that explicitly states that if this gets passed, there is going to be legislation that will be implemented in kind at the exact same time as the rest of this measure, and what it's supposed to do, that disallows, explicitly says, you cannot raise prices at all in retaliation or basically in response or in kind to this measure being approved. So in other words, it doesn't matter who you are, you cannot raise your prices. Or at the very least for the bigger corporations, companies, they cannot do that. Then if that's in there, then this becomes infinitely more supportable. Still ambiguous. Still 50-50 though. No more than 50-50 at that point. Otherwise, I would say even I'm potentially against it. One of my main reasons why is because, besides that aspect of it, obviously, is also the fact that, is this going to be taxed? Probably, because I have a lot of personal experience with not just being on aid via food stamps, which is actually technically federal, and Oregon Health Authority. I guess technically that's federal too, because it's technically Obamacare, because Oregon spent their entire budget multiple times in the tens of millions on a shitty ad, and they had like a few $100,000 left to pay some independent singular contractor to go and build them a website that, of course, instantly fell to pieces the moment it had anybody go to it. Because Oregon pretty much encapsulates how this state functions. I also have secondhand experience via the federal stuff when it comes down to Social Security, and then also state stuff when it comes down to cash benefits. Both the feds via Social Security and the state have a very minute little cap that basically is entrapment for those of us that need to have some income and may start making income. When we first start making it, we automatically lose our benefits just about, because you can't have more than, I believe it is $1,200, 1,200 something bucks. It may have been raised at some point, but as far as I understand, it's still $1,200. You can't save beyond that amount. You can't have beyond that amount in any of your accounts, or else then at that point, not only do you have to report it to them, but they'll start ticking down and knocking off your income from food stamps, cash benefits, and you'll even start losing some of your medical coverage at $1,200 simply being in your account. That's not income. That's not, oh, you make $1,200 a month. It's just, if that's in your account, your savings, you start losing things. And the more that it collects, the worse it gets. Let alone, even if it was $1,200 a month, that's nothing. Especially in a state like Oregon, or even Washington or California, these lethally expensive states. Oregon is currently the 7th highest tax burden of all 50 states in the damn country. It's such an expensive state to live in, just tax-wise. If you throw all of that together, that's concerning. And the reason why I bring up the tax thing is because I know and I understand that apparently anything over, like $600 and over, including an income, or if you win a giveaway where the valuation is $600 or over, you have to pay taxes on that too. They tax you through the nose the moment you hit $600. Think about how pathetic that is. That's nothing. You can't almost do anything with that these days, for no matter who you are, and yet they're taxing us through the nose for that. So that's why I'm concerned about this $1,600. Are we going to be taxed for that? I feel like probably. Oregon is obsessed with tolls and taxes right now. They are trying to do everything they can to gouge us for every penny we make and we have. So that actually makes this quite hypocritical and very ironic, because even to access a state park, public land that we're already paying for taxes in order to have them in the first place and maintain them, they now require us to pay a fucking permit fee. Oh, but not only that, now they're going to increase it by 20-something%. Every single price you have to pay. So no longer it's going to be $5 for a singular day. It's supposed to be like $15 or something like that. Now, for a single day, if you want to visit your park, your local state park at all, you have to pay $15 every time to enter, because it's a permit. I'd sort of understand, it's still stupid, but I'd sort of understand it and kind of could see myself backing it a bit if it was tourists. So you don't live here, you're paying that. If it was locals that live in this state, we deserve, because we're already paying for it via our taxes, we deserve to be able to access our parks for free. That's just another way that Oregon's hell-bent on making it, just price gouging us to hell and back. They're also talking about implementing new taxes. I mean, this is actually one of them. Like, what? They want to increase the taxes, actually, and they already have increased taxes like almost every year on us on certain taxes. Here in Oregon. Oregon is tax happy, and they are permit happy, and they are anything that they can get toll happy, anything they can get money from, they're desperate to grab at. And that's us that's paying for that. So it's ironic that they're trying to do this and like, oh, we're trying to help you. Yeah, are you? Clearly not. it's kind of fucky because there's something fishy with this, in my opinion, for that reason as well. But because they're so tax happy, that's another reason why I'm concerned about this. Is if this happens, are we going to get an unexpected tax form we have to pay on the 1600, even if it's a singular payment? Which this is feeling like it is because they aren't actually specifying if it's, how it's going to work. Like, is it literally just 1600 to every single Oregonian and then that's one and done? Because if that's the case, then that's even less logical to even support this measure, because what the fuck is the point of that? It genuinely doesn't make much sense. It really, really doesn't. It's just a confusing thing. This is, I think, just a really stupid overall measure. And yeah, it probably should be rejected. If we can't get out of them a concession where they'll make it to where they'll push us out, say, to the next November's election, instead, with a revisement, because of us putting the pressure on them to add the legislation in, that if we approve this, that you are going to make damn sure that there's no loopholes and no ways that they can circumvent it, that all corporations and companies, especially if they're bigger, cannot increase their prices in response to this. And if we can't get them to be fully transparent for the first time ever, excluding the Kitzhaber years, ironically, about what the fuck is in this legislation, including, is this a one-time payment? And if so, then no, let's not support it then either. Because the intelligent thing would be to say, well, then fuck that. It would be more logical if you kept the tax up, so that way it could keep happening, even just once a year. Because then it makes more sense. Also, I would argue, why not give it to only the middle income, and specifically the lower middle income, through the rest of the groups, down through the rock bottom people who have zero income at all for an infinite amount of reasons, possibly. That would be a good thing to pressure them to implement for this ballot measure. And then maybe in the next election cycle here in Oregon, or the one after that, or the voting cycle, one of these Novembers, then it could work. You see what I'm saying? I think that would make a lot of sense to support and to do. But that said, that's pretty much all I have to say on the topic for now. If you actually do have more insight and more definable information that hopefully is from a reliable source, like the actual state itself, the actual ballot measure's full legislative text itself, I would highly encourage you to share that in the comments below, because I want to know as much about this as possible as the next person. I would like you guys to potentially share any other ballot measures that are on the state that you find interesting, that you know that other people would find concerning if you don't, or whatever else. That would be fantastic. The last thing we need is another version of Measure 110. I know there's tons of people out there that are blinded by their fake altruism that they hide behind with Measure 110, insisting that it didn't contribute to the overdose epidemic that we're still having here. It didn't contribute to increased drug use or anything like that. It actually helped to apparently the opposite, which is literally a lie. And it's easy to tell because of lived experience and firsthand experience with drug users. We don't need a repetition of that, where literally all they did was say, we're gonna decriminalize hard drugs. And then that's all they did. To this day, that's all Measure 110 did. We don't need another thing like that. And this is sounding a lot like that, where it's very vague, it's ambiguous, they aren't giving detail, they aren't being transparent, and they're just trying to make it look as positive as possible to prey on your altruistic impulses and make you vote yes. But it's actually a very bad idea. Until we get full information and full detail on what the hell this bill is really about, I would say vote no. We do not need more repetition. Oregonians take a long time, usually decades, to learn their fucking lessons. They'll keep banging their head against the same brick on the same wall until they finally, 20 years out, usually, I'm not kidding, finally are like, all right, fine, I don't want to deal with it again, and so they'll actually vote no. Like the transportation bond measure that was put out in 2017, actually. Or was it 2017? No, sorry, they delayed it heavily until I think it was 2019. Thank God people learned their lessons with that. But anyway, if you have any more information on this, or you have any more information state from the state, especially when it comes down to other bond measures that you think, or other legislation that you think should get attention, please let me know in the comments below, and thus other people. I would greatly appreciate it.